The room changed the moment Jamie Dornan reached the microphone. What should have been a polished, predictable acceptance speech slowed into something far more personal. His voice softened, his eyes briefly left the teleprompter, and the pause that followed felt heavier than applause. It was immediately clear this would not be a routine thank you. Jamie began by acknowledging the work, the cast, and the long road to the win, but then the rhythm shifted. He spoke about endurance, about carrying weight quietly, about the kind of support that exists away from sets and spotlights. The words were careful, but the emotion beneath them was not. Listeners sensed that he was stepping outside the safety of prepared lines. Then came the sentence that altered the room. Jamie thanked, "the love that held me steady when everything else felt uncertain," and for a brief second, the audience stopped breathing. He did not name Dakota Johnson, yet the meaning was unmistakable. The camera cut instantly, confirming what the room already understood. Award ceremonies thrive on spectacle, but this was something else. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic gesture meant to dominate headlines. Instead, there was restraint, which made the moment feel more exposed. In a space designed for performance, authenticity felt almost disruptive. Those who have followed Jamie's career know how rare this is. He has long maintained a firm boundary between public recognition and private life. Even at career highs, his gratitude speeches usually remain tightly professional. That history made this deviation impossible to ignore. Witnesses described a silence that lingered longer than usual before the applause arrived. It wasn't awkward, but reflective, as if the audience collectively realized they were hearing something unrehearsed. When the clapping finally came, it felt less celebratory and more supportive. The tone of the night subtly shifted. The context of the win only deepened the impact. This award came after years of roles that tested him emotionally and professionally, projects that demanded vulnerability without guaranteeing validation. Standing on that stage, the acknowledgement of love felt like a release rather than a performance. It suggested that the victory meant more than industry approval. Dakota's reaction became its own quiet focal point. She did not wave, smile broadly, or play to the camera. Instead, her expression reflected something private, a mix of pride and emotion that did not seek attention. That restraint mirrored Jamie's tone and reinforced the sincerity of the exchange. Social media responded instantly, but not with the usual frenzy. Many viewers described feeling unexpectedly moved, even unsettled. The moment didn't offer spectacle or gossip, it offered something closer to truth. In an environment saturated with image management, that honesty landed hard. What made the speech resonate was not what was said, but what was implied. Jamie did not frame love as inspiration in a generic sense. He framed it as support during difficulty, suggesting periods unseen by the public. That nuance transformed the win into a shared experience rather than a solitary achievement. Industry insiders later noted that this portion of the speech was not included in the original script. The slight hesitation before he spoke, the way his tone shifted, all pointed to a decision made in real time. That spontaneity is rare on stages where every second is timed. It added weight to every word. For fans, the moment blurred the line between celebration and confession. It wasn't about confirming a relationship or making a statement. It was about acknowledging dependence, something often hidden behind success. That vulnerability made the win feel earned in a different way. As the ceremony moved on, the speech lingered. Other awards were presented, other speeches delivered, but conversation kept circling back. The Golden Globes had produced many memorable moments, yet this one stood apart for its quiet intensity. It proved that sometimes the most powerful spotlight comes not from winning, but from choosing to speak honestly when no one expects it. As the applause faded, attention turned to what had not been said. Jamie Dornan offered no clarification, no follow-up, and no attempt to frame the moment for headlines. That restraint invited interpretation rather than closure. In an industry where meaning is often overexplained, the silence felt deliberate. Those close to the situation suggested the line was never meant to announce anything. It was, instead, an acknowledgement of a private reality that briefly surfaced under pressure. Acceptance speeches compress years of experience into seconds, and sometimes what emerges is not strategy but truth. In that compression, filters slip. The context surrounding the win matters. This award arrived after a period many described as demanding and isolating, a stretch of work that required emotional endurance without immediate validation. Gratitude, in that moment, naturally gravitates toward whoever shared the burden. The phrasing Jamie chose emphasized steadiness, not celebration. Observers noted how carefully he avoided spectacle. He did not turn to the audience for approval, nor did he scan the room theatrically. The delivery was quiet, contained, and almost reluctant. That tone suggested the words were meant for one person, not the room. When the camera cut to Dakota Johnson, the exchange felt complete without dialogue. There was no performative response, no visible attempt to manage perception. The mutual restraint reinforced the impression that this was not a public signal, but a private acknowledgement momentarily exposed. That mutual understanding carried more weight than any declaration could. Media reaction reflected that ambiguity. Some outlets framed the moment as confirmation, others as coincidence shaped by shared history. Analysts debated whether the line crossed a boundary or simply acknowledged support. The lack of consensus became the story. Behind the scenes, industry voices emphasized how unusual such candor is on stages governed by timing and messaging. Acceptance speeches are rehearsed, vetted, and often sanitized. Choosing to speak from emotion rather than script risks misinterpretation. That risk, however, is what made the moment resonate. Fans responded with a mix of admiration and introspection. Many described feeling unexpectedly moved, not because of romance, but because of vulnerability. Public success is often presented as solitary, and hearing dependence acknowledged disrupts that myth. The response suggested a hunger for authenticity over spectacle. Importantly, neither party attempted to extend the moment afterward. There were no coordinated appearances, no statements to capitalize on attention. The story was allowed to exist on its own terms. In an economy of constant engagement, restraint reads as confidence. The speech also reframed the win itself. Awards often celebrate outcome, but this moment highlighted process. It reminded audiences that achievement is rarely isolated from support systems that remain unseen. Gratitude, when framed this way, becomes an act of humility rather than promotion. Critics who dismissed the moment as overinterpreted missed its core. The power was not in implication, but in tone. Jamie's delivery conveyed relief rather than triumph, connection rather than conquest. That emotional register set it apart from the evening's more conventional highlights. As days passed, the moment settled into a reference point rather than a headline. It resurfaced in discussions about authenticity, privacy, and the cost of public life. Its endurance came from subtlety, not scale. The fewer details offered, the longer it lingered. What remains instructive is the balance struck between openness and boundary. The line acknowledged love without naming it, dependence without exposure. That balance preserved privacy while honoring truth. It is a difficult line to walk, especially under global scrutiny. Ultimately, the speech did not demand interpretation, it invited reflection. Viewers were left to consider who carries them through uncertainty, and how rarely that support is named in moments of success. The Golden Globes stage amplified the sentiment, but the sentiment itself was universal. In a night defined by winners and outcomes, this moment stood apart for its quiet honesty. It demonstrated that recognition can be shared without being displayed. And long after the trophies were packed away, that brief acknowledgement continued to resonate, precisely because it chose meaning over explanation.